Today on the Deep Dive, we are plunging into one of the most ambitious and, frankly, radical political projects being talked about right now. The concept of a United States of Africa, or U.S. Africa.
And this isn't just, talk of a closer federation or a new trade bloc. The sources we've gathered are discussing a single nation, one that would encompass all 54 sovereign states.
One currency, one army, one passport.
Exactly. The scale of the vision is it's breathtaking.
So that's our mission today, to unpack this massive idea. We're going to look at its really radical historical roots in Pan-Africanism.
And the powerful grassroots movements happening now, especially the push coming from the diaspora.
And some of the truly bold economic and environmental proposals that are propping this dream up. And of course, the geopolitical reality it's facing here in 2025.
Right, because what's fueling this debate now is this incredible sense of urgency. Some advocates are proposing this union could happen as soon as 2026.
2026, that's an incredibly aggressive timeline.
It is, and it's driven by this palpable desire to finally break away from the long shadow of colonialism and the financial dependency that still exists.
But you're right to point out this isn't a new idea at all. This vision is deeply rooted in that immediate post-independence era. So to understand where it's going, we have to start with where it began.
If we roll back the clock to that moment, the central figure was absolutely Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana. He was the continent's most vocal Pan-Africanist.
He famously said, Africa must unite or perish, right?
That's the one. He saw political independence as fragile, as unsustainable, unless it was immediately followed by economic and military integration.
But that radical fire was, well, it was quickly met with some serious skepticism from other new nations. By 1961, the continent was really fractured into two camps.
It was. On one side, you had the Casablanca Group. These were the radicals.
Led by Ghana and Egypt.
Right. And they demanded an immediate single government union. They believed fragmentation just left them vulnerable to foreign manipulation. They were largely anti-Western, leaning towards socialist models.
And then, opposing them, you had the Monrovia Group. These were the pragmatists.
Nations like Nigeria, Liberia, Senegal.
And they saw immediate union as just impossible chaos. They wanted a much slower path, focused on cooperation, on economic integration first.
And this is the key. They insisted on preserving their national sovereignty. Their motto was unity in diversity.
And in the end, the pragmatists won.
They did. The 1963 creation of the Organization of African Unity, the OAU, which you have to remember is the direct predecessor to today's African Union.
That was the big compromise.
It was. It enshrined the principle of non-interference. And that decision, while it was meant to keep the peace, effectively shelved Nkrumah's dream of a single state.
So why does it fail back then? The sources point to a few compounding problems. First, those inherited colonial borders.
Arbitrary lines drawn in Berlin in 1884.
Yeah, creating immediate logistical nightmares.
Absolutely. And second, the whole economic structure was prohibitive. Colonial powers deliberately set up systems to trade outward to Europe.
Not inward between African nations.
Exactly. There was no infrastructure. And then you just can't overlook foreign interference. Internal fragility was constantly exploited, leading to coups.
Like the one that overthrew Nkrumah himself in 1966.
These external powers had zero interest in seeing a unified, economically independent Africa emerge as a competitor.
So the vision pretty much died on the vine in 66. But what's fascinating is that the sources show the seed of that dream didn't really die. It just went dormant.
And it was waiting for a new generation, one driven by this powerful emotional sense of return.
That's the crucial difference today, isn't it? The idea has been reignited by this modern groundswell centered on the diaspora, the Africans for Africans movement.
It is. And this modern push is heavily concentrated in West Africa. Dakar, in Senegal, is often seen as the symbolic point of return.
And we're talking about tangible economic efforts here. Things like the Made in Africa project. You have repatriates, people like Amaya Gigi Davis, who are building real economic infrastructure.
They're not just talking. They're running wholesale export programs, fashion departments. They're creating the very economic engine a unified state would need.
And the personal stories are they're so powerful. We saw one about a man from Newark, New Jersey.
I remember that one. He took a DNA test.
Found out he was 8% Senegalese, arrived on January 29th, and just felt immediately at home. He says he plans to grow old and possibly die in Africa.
That desire for a shared identity, the active choice to repatriate, that's something much deeper than just politics.
It is, and that feeling is infectious. The Modern Internet Coalition for this, USA for Use Africa, was founded by Mark K. Wood. He was inspired way back in 1987.
After an interview with Muhammad Ali, of all people.
Exactly. Ali said his lifetime wish was to see a United States of Africa, a vision he got after his rumble in the jungle fight in Zaire.
And this push for unity attracted some, well, some very powerful and dangerous attention. This is where the geopolitical intrigue really kicks in.
You're talking about Muammar Gaddafi.
Yes. The advocates for U.S. Africa often claim that Gaddafi was so impressed by their early efforts that he pledged a staggering $90 billion for the project.
$90 billion. That's a colossal sum of money.
It is. And our sources note that these advocates often frame that pledge as a key reason for his assassination. They argue that external powers just would not tolerate that kind of financial independence.
The formation of a new global power backed by that kind of wealth, it really highlights the perceived threat.
A truly unified Africa is a threat to the established global order.
Okay, so let's unpack that. Let's set aside the slow path for a minute.
Yeah.
What does the fully unified vision actually entail if the radicals got their way by 2026?
Well, they're advocating for a complete structural overhaul. I mean, dissolving all colonial borders, for starters.
True continental mobility.
Right, and establishing a single continental currency that operates entirely outside the petrodollar network. That is a crucial and radical move.
And just for our listeners, let's quickly break that down. Why is exiting the petrodollar network such a massive deal?
Well, in short, the petrodollar system basically requires that oil, the world's most vital commodity, is traded in U.S. dollars.
Which cements the dollar's status as the world's reserve currency.
Exactly. It gives the U.S. immense financial leverage. A unified Africa, sitting on huge oil reserves and trading in its own currency, would directly challenge that. It's not just a currency reform. Some would see it as a declaration of economic war.
That really raises the stakes. Okay, so beyond currency, they also envision one national army.
A unified defense force. And that's meant to solve several problems at once. First, get rid of foreign military bases on the continent.
And second, provide internal security.
Yes, to prevent civil wars. They cite conflicts like the Rwandan genocide as something a unified force could contain much faster. And then they call for harmonizing everything. One foreign policy, one education system, one healthcare system.
And this is where it gets really interesting for me, the green superpower concept.
Ah, yes. The argument is that because Africa's industrialization level is relatively low, it could actually leapfrog the carbon-polluting phase that developed nations are stuck with.
Leap straight to green energy dominance.
It's an unprecedented opportunity. They envision a massive solar array in the Sahara Desert that could power the entire continent.
And then sell the excess power to Europe, China, India, generate immense income.
And it's not just solar. They talk about using the world's largest national coastline for hydroelectric power, building solar-powered transcontinental highways.
Connecting Cairo to Cape Town, Accra to Mogadishu. This is about connecting African economies inward, finally braiding that colonial design we talked about.
Precisely. The core motive behind all of this is complete self-reliance. Resource nationalism. Uniting allows Africa to finally leverage its vast resources: oil, gas, minerals, talent.
And the key is nationalizing those resources. The vision is that 80% of the profits benefit local people, not foreign investors.
That's the central promise. Prosperity through sovereignty.
That radical vision is. It's incredibly compelling. But let's bring it back down to earth. If we look at the 2025 reality, the focus is much more on incremental progress, isn't it?
It is. The African Union's focus is long-term integration, mostly under their Agenda 2063. And the cornerstone of that today is the African Continental Free Trade Area, the AfCFTA.
Which is monumental. I mean, it's the largest free trade area in the world by number of countries. It's designed to force the creation of those internal economic links.
And they're also implementing things like the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, PAPSS.
Which sounds technical, but it's a huge step.
It's fundamental. It means that a business in Ghana can pay a supplier in Nigeria instantly in their own local currencies without having to convert to U.S. dollars first. That's economic unity in action.
The AU is also linking historical injustice to future development. They designated 2025 as the year of reparations.
Right, justice for Africans and people of African descent. It explicitly ties correcting those historical imbalances to securing funding for the future.
Part of that includes tangible moves, too, like the plans for an Africa credit rating agency.
Which would reduce reliance on those Western-controlled bodies that many argue, perpetuate negative financial perceptions about the continent.
But at the same time, Not all the movement is toward one big union. We're also seeing this rise of regionalism.
Yes, the consolidation of the Alliance of Sahel states, the AES, that's Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, they formally withdrew from ECOWAS.
And they're pursuing their own separate confederation. They're even launching a common biometric passport for their citizens.
So it's a form of unity, but on a regional scale. And there have been these viral claims that Burkina Faso's Captain Ibrahim Traoré is leading a continent-wide plan.
But the fact-checkers have labeled those as false.
They have. He's a Pan-Africanist, no doubt, but his focus right now seems to be on strengthening that regional alliance, not dissolving every state immediately.
So regardless of the political mechanics, there's still this massive internal hurdle to overcome: identity.
hmm The sources really highlight the urgent need to address deep-seated xenophobia. We still see these tragic examples, like South Africans attacking immigrants from other African countries.
So a true Pan-African identity, a real solidarity, has to come first.
It's an essential precursor.
Hmm.
You can't unify 54 governments if the people themselves don't feel a fundamental connection.
So we have the economic rationale, the military potential, the cultural groundswell. Why does political unification remain stalled?
Well, it comes back to complexity. You have too many divergent motivations, socialist visions clashing with capitalist ones, and just pervasive political instability.
And you can't ignore the external forces. The argument is that countries like the US, China, Russia, India, they all have vested interest in mortgage of Africa.
They benefit from a fragmented continent that can be, manipulated and picked over for resources. The last thing they want is a unified global power dictating terms.
And we see that friction even now. In 2025, the U.S. was considering expanding travel bans to nearly 40 African countries.
A move that reinforces division, doesn't it? It makes the idea of a single African passport feel very distant.
So what does this all mean for the dream? We keep coming back to this one quote, this mandate from the sources. Africa's leaders cannot unite Africa, the people can.
And that just flips the whole narrative. It emphasizes that this has to be a bottom-up shift in consciousness. It has to come from a collective will to create a better future. It can't just be dictated from the top down.
It's about that shift in identity. The activist Bono once suggested that cultivating a broader African identity, like the patriotism in the U.S., despite all its different groups, could be the catalyst for resolving those deeper tensions.
It's an identity mandate before it's a political one.
So the U.S.-Africa concept is sitting at this fascinating intersection.
It is. Between the radical grassroots dreaming with that optimistic 2026 timeline and the slow, necessary work of institutional integration through the AU and the AFCFTA, the tension is palpable.
And for you, the listener, whether or not a single superstate materializes, these debates about economic autonomy, resource control, and self-determination, they are actively shaping global politics right now.
Absolutely. This is immediately relevant to understanding the global landscape in 2025. The sources describe a unified Africa as a gamble on a scale that's rarely seen in human history.
It leaves you with a profound question.
What price is worth paying for true, complete sovereignty? And who, at the end of the day, bears the cost of this immense political gamble?
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.